Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Conscious Grief series. I am joined by Carole Henderson today, who is an Edgy Therapy trainer. So, welcome, Carole.
Hi, Tara. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about Edgy Therapy because I'm very interested to train in it myself.
Cool.
Some people might be thinking Edgy Therapy, what does that have to do with grief? Um,
Mhm.
so perhaps first of all, you could tell us a little bit about your own personal experience with grief and how you have become a trainer in this specific therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because grief is definitely one of those areas. I don't think anyone, when they're at school and the careers teacher says, "What are you going to be?" or says, "Oh, I'm going to make grief my life's work." That would be pretty unusual. We tend to fall into this because something happens. So, excuse me, my big life-changing event was in 2006 when my first husband, Kevin, died from cancer. He was 41 years old. I was 40. I'd been with him since I was 18. So my entire adult life with this man. And when he went, everything went. My life was in complete and utter disarray. I do remember standing in my back garden and working out that at age 40, I was likely to have more time without him than I'd had with him. So I resolved to live for two rather than sort of not live. I reckon he didn't get the choice and I did. And it's really fun. I don't know where that came from in the midst of this devastation, but it was just kind of this little epiphany. And so I said, right, I'm going to live for two. I have no idea how I'm going to do that. And most days I couldn't, live for half a person, let alone two. But that was kind of what I fell back on. He didn't get to choose. I choose life. I embrace life. So I was constantly looking for ways to help myself. And I did lots of different things. Once you get past the obvious, which is you go to the GP and they hand you sleeping tablets and not the good ones. Can I have what my husband had? No, they're way too powerful, but they work. Were you taking them? So they gave the not great ones and they didn't work anyway. And I didn't really want to do drugs and all of that stuff. And I had some hypnotherapy and which was a bit helpful. And I had some Reiki, which was a bit helpful. And I had regular massage and I got to be good friends with the lady that did my massage. So that was good. And so we'd like have coffee and set the world to rights. But so all these bits, I was determined to help myself. I wasn't a sit around and wait to feel better kind of girl. That's just not how I'm built. So all these things helped a bit or for varying lengths of time. So the massage would last about a day. The hypnotherapy lasted longer than that. The Reiki lasted a bit longer than that. But all these things, it was just until the next wave hit. And then I'd be back, knocked over again and going, have I got the energy to get up again? He didn't get to choose. Get myself up again and look for something else. And by accident, I stumbled across a self-help book, and I found it really helpful. So then I went to train on in that model, and I found it very inspiring. So I trained in to be a trainer in that. So then I found myself as a grief educator, as it calls now, grief trainer. So that all kind of happened around 2010. But always I was very mindful of, is this the best thing? Because all those things I tried, this constant, is there a better way? And I would always say to people, this is what I believe to be the best available right now. If I find anything better, I'll go do it. Well, there was a big thing. So the start of 2022, I found this thing. in Canada, of all places, called Edgy Therapy. And well done on saying Edgy Therapy, not EDU therapy, by the way. I know if you've only seen it written down, you go, EDU therapy, what's that? It sounds like it might be painful. But it's actually a contraction of education and therapy, because it's psychological education. It's teaching you a set of skills, in other words. So what I love about it is that it's very straightforward. You get to identify and express your feelings, but it's also teaching you the set of skills to resolve them. So its full title would be Edgy Therapy Grief Resolution. And I talk about emotional pain resolution. And the reason I say it that way round is culturally, we tend to attach the grief word to somebody died. And sometimes a person doesn't die. I mean, my husband physically died, but sometimes your hopes and dreams die, which might be you go through a divorce or a horrible romantic breakup. So the marriage is dead. The person's very much alive and still causing more aggravation. And when you get married, you don't dream of it ending in divorce. You dream of going into retirement and growing old together and hopefully dying within minutes of each other, so you've got this whole life together. So we grieve when our hopes and dreams get lost. And there's also things we grieve that aren't quite so tangible. The child we never got to conceive, or maybe the child we never carried to full term, or the career that we should have had but injury prevented it, or a million other things. There are thousands of life events that cause significant emotional loss, which is all grief. I know it's grief, but lots of people don't attach that label. So in order to make Edgy Therapy accessible for people suffering all sorts of pain, including bereavement, I call it emotional pain resolution. And it's about resolving pain, because grief in its purest form is sadness. It may be bittersweet, because like if I think about Kevin, it can be with a smile, because there are lots of fond memories there. We had over 20 years of good stuff together, and then there's some crap in there like any normal married couple. But it's still sad because he's gone, So that's bittersweet, and there's sadness, but there's no pain there. And that's what my definition of resolve. The pain is gone. So while people say, well, you can't recover from grief, you'll always have it. So I say, yeah, the loss will always be there. There can be sadness, there can be this bittersweet stuff, but there shouldn't be pain. And if it's painful when you talk about them and the memories come up, you have a nice memory, then it turns painful, that's unresolved grief. If you can't even go there, you can't even look at your photo albums, that's unresolved grief. So having the tools to resolve it is a life skill, which I think everybody should have.
Yeah, quite right. And tell everybody what the strap line is.
It's building sustainable emotional wellness. And, there's a lot of talk about mental ill health, often described as mental health. We all have mental health. We all have emotional health. And there can be it's a whole different topic on discussing the difference between mental health and emotional health, if there is one. But emotional good health comes from letting go of the past. And that's great. I remember being in deep grief and people say, you need to let go and move on. And go, let go of what and move on where? And, get a grip of what? It's all these, which are kind of their truisms, but they're useless when you're grieving if you don't know how. And that's where Edgy Therapy, because it's educational, it's teaching you a set of skills, I find I'm a very practical, pragmatic woman. I like tool sets. I don't want to sit and explore. I just want to get it done, So, okay, I'm allowed to feel sad. That's normal. How can I get rid of the frustration, the anger, this giant sense of unfairness, this huge weight of guilt, whatever flavor that your pain is taken? How do you put it down? How do you let go and move forwards? Well, nobody's going to know unless you learn. So that's what I'm doing now is teaching people. And once they've been through that 8-session program, they've got the skills. They don't need to come back to me next time something bad happens. They just need to get their toolkit out and use them. Now, if they want to, either because they've forgotten or because they want me to hold their hand, either metaphorically or actually, through the process, then that's what I'm there to do. So it's equipping people. It's very empowering, because it's not come back and see me next week forever. It's here's how you learn. Here's your tools. And along the way, yeah, there may be tears, there may be smiles, there probably will be hugs, or a zug if we're doing it on Zoom.
Oh, that's good.
Sometimes we call it a shug, which is a self-hug. And you know what? This feels really weird at first, but the longer you hold it, you hold it for a good 10 seconds, like an actual hug, it is getting up there. It's not quite as good as having another person because you don't get their energy off them. But your brain's like, I'm being held.
Yeah.
So it is helpful. So we can kind of virtually hug when we're working online. If we're working in person, it works equally well. And it means that you can resolve, yes, bereavements, yes, other tangible losses, divorce, job, but also the more intangible ones, loss of childhood, loss of safety, loss of innocence, loss of career, health, reputation, business, all these things that are kind of harder to get hold of. The tools work. So while every person is unique and every situation is unique, it's like sometimes, I don't like the idea of something that's so structured because everyone's different. It's like, yeah, well, I'm sure a carpenter will tell you every time he comes to put on a door in a different building, it's a bit different, but he still uses a screwdriver and a screw to fix a hitch. So what I'm doing is go, here's your screwdriver, here's your pliers. And so basically, here's your toolkit. So yeah, the situation is going to be slightly different. You're going to look at it slightly differently and take the unique measurements, if you like. And then use those same tools to meet the demands of that unique job. So it's very flexible in that sense.
I just think while we're speaking, it's like there's so many, of us that didn't get raised kind of checking in with our emotional health. And for some people, this is like as it's called, that educational, really getting back to understanding our inner world and our emotions and how to deal with that, because I guess so many people are operating on I'm feeling anxious, so I'm going to put TV on, or smoke a cigarette, or we have all these distractions and ways of like pushing the feelings down and numbing them. So something like this, it sounds to me like it's a way to educate people around dealing with these emotions that come up.
Yeah, and to bringing awareness to that, because as you say, we've perhaps not consciously addressed it at all. And some people are, have been brought up in environments which are really on the harsh end of that, which is, you show fear, you get thumped, you smirk, you get thumped. So you learn to wear this mask. And so it's not about cracking the mask. It is about allowing yourself gradually, step by step, to peel a layer off, and having the tools to do that safely at a pace that suits you. And when you look at that is that example, perhaps loss of safety, loss of childhood. How many people would call that grief?
Right.
It absolutely is grief. And I think unresolved grief is at the heart of so many unresolved issues. You mentioned have a cigarette, so addiction. So whether it's smoking, drinking, eating, or not eating, there's things that we do to try and get control over our world are usually, when it comes back to it, there's unresolved grief at its core. And anxiety isn't always, but is often a grief symptom. So when I've worked with grieving people, when they first come and see me, they describe feeling anxious and they've never struggled with anxiety before. It's a really common grief symptom. That's our old survival brain going, where's the next bad thing coming from? Mm-hmm. Which, maybe it was on fairly low level before and it's suddenly switched into high alert because something bad happened. And then you've got people who are already anxious. Their little hindbrain is already kind of, where's the threat? Where's the threat? Where's the threat? Where's the threat? And then something bad happens. Oh my God, it's there. Now where's the next big threat? Where's the next threat? And the anxiety lifts this exponential level. So when you address the big thing, the anxiety levels can start to subside again. It's not instant, nothing is. But it just gradually puts you back in control, gets that front brain back in charge so we can kind of wind back that survival brain a bit to go, yeah, we're safe. We can be here in the here and now, being in the present moment. So we have a way of actually, I use this quite a lot, which is a feeling wheel.
Yeah.
So in mine, grief is at the center. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the sort of, if you like, the basic feelings: happy, confused, peaceful, sad, scared, angry. And then as we go out, we've got more descriptive words to really help people pin down what it is. When they say, well, I'm angry. And actually, do you know what? It's really not anger, it's frustration. And so starting to identify, naming them is the start of resolving them. So that's a key part of it, is acknowledging, okay, and it's normal and okay to have these feelings. We don't demonize feelings in edge therapy. Obviously, socially, certain feelings are demonized. There's nothing wrong with being angry. The problem comes when it's out of control and physicality results and other people get hurt either emotionally or physically. But anger is a result of frustration and a sense of unfairness that's built up, and it's allowed to explode. So by resolving the cause of not what made you angry today, because in reality, that's not what the issue was. It was whatever happened. And I'll give you a lovely example of that. So Kevin, my husband who died, fairly classic man who wouldn't go to the doctor. Mm-hmm. No matter what, it'll be all right. Do you think you should get that looked at? No, it'll be all right. Had a mole on his leg that was bleeding. No, it'll be all right. I just caught it on the bath. It'll be fine. Turned out to be skin cancer. It wasn't all right. It was not fine. Now, so in the end, I used to say he died of not going to the doctor. In reality, he died of fear. Because he was scared. Yeah. So anyway, roll on a few years. My first long-term relationship after that was with a really nice man called Roger. And I remember on one occasion, he was complaining. He'd done something to hurt himself. I think you should get that looked at. It will be all right. So my response was, I yelled at him. I said, they'll carve that on your bleep, bleep tombstone. and stormed out. And of course, by the time I got home, was I really angry with Roger? No. I was angry with Kevin because he died of a treatable form of cancer because he wouldn't go to the doctor. And that's kind of, if you like, perhaps a more extreme example, but it was a very visible one to me, but it's not always that obvious. But as soon as you start resolving that, and that's when I realized, okay, I've got some more unresolved stuff with Kev over his it'll be all right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So do the work. So
people want to do the work and they're interested in this edgy therapy. How does it work?
Well, if you want to do the edgy therapy, if you contact me, I can put you in touch with your nearest edgy therapy specialist or someone who will work online. And so my contact details are on my website, which is www.edu-therapy.uk. And I'm sure there'll be somewhere where you can find all that. And then, so I train people to become edgy therapy specialists or edgy therapists, to use it shortly. So if you're inspired to help others, that's how I can help you. But if you want to do your work, if you want to do your own healing work, and we do part of that as part of the training, but if you want to do your own healing work, then yeah, we've got people across the country who can help you with that in an 8-session program. It's 12 hours spread over 8 90-minute sessions. And week by week, your edgy therapy specialist will take you through each of the tools in turn until you get to the end. And then by the end of it, you'll have resolved any emotional crap, to use the technical term, from 2 different relationships. So and you might find that you go because maybe mum's died and you're heartbroken because of mum, but actually, do you know, when you start under the way, you discover, do you know what? There's an awful lot of stuff I'm angry with dad over. So maybe I'll start with dad and then maybe I'll get to mum later. It doesn't matter. You kind of find your way as to really where the pain is coming from. But you don't necessarily know that until you're into the process. And sometimes, there's nothing there with mum. You said all you needed to say. So, for example, when my mum died, which was in 2015, by this time I'd been around the whole grief work for a long time. So I knew that I needed to tell her everything I could while she was still with us. I got a little bit of notice. She had an aortic aneurysm and the doctor said it will burst and kill you. You can have surgery. She refused surgery because she wouldn't be able to go home afterwards. She'd have to go to a nursing home. So she refused surgery. But it didn't burst and kill her. It kind of split. So you were nursing her for 9 days. The doctors gave her about 3 hours. She lived for 9 days. And it was amazing because when she did die, she was at home in her own bed, surrounded by people that loved her. And we all got to say goodbye. And she passed away peacefully in her own bed. So, do you know what? There was very little unresolved stuff for me because she had about as good a possible death as you could get. It was not perfect, but it never is. But it wasn't in hospital with her unconscious, which is, sadly how a lot of people, that's the end, and they don't get to have that last conversation. Or it happens, you're overseas and they've gone, whatever the thing is. So what I have learned is to treat every time you part company with someone you care about, is to say goodbye. And they teach the emergency services this. I think we should all be taught this, which is, try not to part on bad terms. Sometimes when you're really riled. So what I'd say, because I'm married again, I'm happy to say I've met another really great man, Ian. And so sometimes when I am really cross with him, because he is a human male, so, I'm going to get cross with him, I'll say, I really don't like you right now, and I love you.
That's good. Yeah.
Because I still love him. I might be really spectacularly cross. It'd be really easy to say, I hate you. What if he went out the door and had a heart attack? Or what if he went out the door and was in a car crash? So I tell the emotional truth, which I'm really not happy with you. Love you. Right? But it's done. So if he didn't come back, I wouldn't be left with my last words were.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very conscious or, way of choosing your words in conflict. Yeah.
And they teach it to emergency services because obviously they're doing a job where they might go out and not come back alive.
Yeah.
But the truth is, none of us are getting out of this alive. And we don't know when the undetected brain aneurysm is going to strike. I've worked, in 15 years, I've heard so many stories: sudden adult death, car crashes, sudden illnesses, heart attack, stroke, and they could never speak again. All of that stuff. Or it could even be they're alive, just an estrangement that you had no control over. And what have I done? You have to think, what have I done?
Yeah.
And you can't say goodbye. You didn't get the chance. So that's why having a set of tools which allows you to say all those things safely to a surrogate, if you like, i.e. your edgy therapy specialist, gets them said, gets them out of your heart in a structured way, rather than a live your story of pain again and again and again way. Because we've all met those people as well. I mean, people who are stuck in their pain and they become their pain and they live their pain, and every breath they take is about their pain. That's so desperately sad. And then they become fearful of putting the pain down because they don't know what they'd be without their pain. And I just want to teach people to be peaceful. So the loss will always be there. The pain doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And yet bring in that consciousness, to use your word, which I think is a great word, and you can't do it all the time. We're all human beings. I don't all the time. But just stopping and thinking every so often, life is fragile, life is short.
Yeah.
We don't know what's around the corner. Next flipping pandemic. Just because we've got through this one doesn't mean there isn't another one coming. So are we doing as much as we can to protect ourselves from being unresolved?
Yeah. Yeah. And how would you describe the term conscious grief or conscious grieving?
For me, it's being aware that grief is a normal, natural function of being a human being, and it's okay. And contrary to what some people say, you don't always have to be positive. I'm a very positive person. I have a positive outlook, but trying to be positive 100% of the time is self-defeating. You need to consciously allow yourself to process and allow the feelings to go out again. If you think of yourself, emotions as a continuing stream, if you try and push them down and keep them there, it's more like a stagnant pond.
Yeah.
So let it flow. Tears are there for a reason. They have found an enzyme which is present in tears of emotional pain that is not present in tears of joy or tears of onions. It's only there, and it is a natural pain reliever. So when you say to someone, stop crying, you are literally asking them to deny themselves natural pain relief.
Wow.
Physiologically. So that's not just kind of, lovely emotional speak, if you like. That is physiologically true.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I haven't actually asked this question this time on this series about it. Why are we so bad at crying? Like, we always say, I'm sorry, whenever we cry in front of anyone.
That's called social conditioning. But I think originally it was a survival thing again. The good old hindbrain we were talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
that in the days when we were at risk from predators or other tribes, a baby crying would alert the enemy or a predator.
Mm.
This is my theory anyway. So then to quiet the babies to keep everybody safe. And then it becomes like an ingrained habit that we are quiet. And then there's this whole thing of, the typical masculine thing of the macho thing of, you don't show your feelings. To be a man is to not show your feelings. Feelings are shown as a sign of weakness. I don't know where that came from originally. But the fact it's global, to me, tends to suggest it must have some kind of survival thing at its way back in prehistory.
Yeah.
Then it's got distorted.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the modern environment, our fight or flight or freeze response has just got completely overwhelmed. There's so much stimulation going on. And even now, it's, crying is somehow a sign of weakness. This was nonsense. We're getting better, but it really makes me gnash my teeth when I see TV commercials for funeral companies. And it's full of people saying, yeah, well, I want mine to be a party and, I don't want tears. And it's like, well, actually, it's not up to you. Because it's great having a party when they lived to be 99 and died peacefully in bed surrounded by loved ones. It's really hard to be a party and not crying when they were 3 months old.
Yeah.
And they get a chance at life. So even now, this whole kind of the way we're addressing the whole funeral thing, there's a whole series there, by the way.
That is true. I know it's
is as soon as you say do it this way, you're hurting someone. We all have to be open to the fact that everybody's different. We will express our grief in different ways. There are no rules. Some people will never cry. That's just not them. My own mum, loved her dearly, would cry at a television commercial. There was a cute puppy on it. Definitely cried at the John Lewis ads. My husband died dry-eyed. My dad died dry-eyed because it was almost so deep. So there are no rules. But this whole thing, big girls don't cry, big boys don't cry, it's still there.
Yeah. It's a
Not
shame.
so overt, but it's implicit in so many ways.
Yeah. I know. I think we have to feel really safe as well, don't we, in order to really cry in front of people.
Yeah, and there's a difference between, it's interesting to say really cry, isn't it? Because there's Hollywood grieving.
Yeah, and then there's
and there's all that snot and noise.
Yeah, very carnal,
Primal. Yeah. And again, harking back to those early days of being widowed, I was a friend of mine I was talking to, and I think there'd been something on the news. I think there was a funeral in the Lebanon or somewhere, and there'd footage, and you could see the widow had draped herself over the coffin of someone who had been shot and was wailing. And she said, oh, we don't do that. And I said, yeah, widows wail here. We just do it in the privacy of our own homes. Because I remember roaming the house at the top of my voice, wailing in agony. But apparently, British people don't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't throw myself on the coffin and do it. but some people will. And you know what? If that's what they need to do, let them.
Quite right. Quite right, Carole. Well, this brings us to a natural conclusion, I think.
Already.
Yeah. Is there a last thought that you'd like to share?
I think that the lasting thing is knowing that while the loss will always be there, the pain doesn't have to be. You can do something to help yourself. It doesn't have to be what I teach. You know, there are lots of routes to healing the human heart, and this series will help you discover maybe some ways that are right for you. But the most important message is no, it's possible.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a lovely closing statement. So lovely to be with you, Carole. And before we finish, you are going to offer a gift.
I am going to offer a discount code so that if you are inspired to train with me and help others heal their hearts using Edgy Therapy, you will be able to get an unprecedented 25% off the training.
Thank you so
So
much.
that's, I will sort that out, and you'll find out how to do that with Tara's lovely communications.
Okay. Thank you, Carole. Thank you so very much. And we'll have a link to your website so people can find out more. All right.
Wonderful. Right. Thanks, Tara.
Thanks for listening, everybody.